Assalamualaikum, grade 7. How are you? Faiza Nadeem here with your English lesson. And as usual, Faiza Nadeem is wishing, praying and hoping that all of you are hale and hearty. All of you are enjoying your life. But among all this hustle and bustle, never forget your farais, right? So what we are going to do today, I'm going to tell you within a second. But for that, you'll have to walk with me a long mile. Come with me and we'll find out what today's lesson is all about. जी, मेरे बहुत प्यारे बच्चों, what is the board telling you? Yes, the board is telling you that we are still doing Unit 8, family feelings in general, and in specific, we are doing I Fall in Disgrace, which is starting from page number 201 से 210 तक, right? तो हम ये जो comprehension है, ये किसके बारे में है? ये comprehension बच्चे डेविड कॉपरफील्ड, one of Charles Dickens' very important classic novel. अपने previous lecture में हमने इस novel के बारे में, इसका नया नाम, जो ओरिजिनल नाम था इसका, उसके बारे में, चार्ल्स डिकेंस के बारे में सब कुछ पढ़ा था. जो याद करना है वो सिर्फ ये है कि ये उनका 8th novel था जो कि classic था. We did the vocabulary questions in the first lecture, and in this lecture we are going to do all the comprehension questions and answers, right? So let's start with the comprehension questions and answers. The first question is from reading for interpretation, right? The first question is, how did David feel as his stepfather prepared to test him on his lesson? What was it about Mr. Murdstone's behavior that made him feel this way? As in the beginning of the comprehension, we get to learn that Mr. Murdstone was switching his cane. He was switching them up. He was shuffling them up. He was looking at them, and that really petrified David. David had anticipated what had come next, what would be approaching next, right? I have given the helping words and phrases on the board. You have to phrase the complete sentence out, right? I am going to give you verbally the entire sentence, but you are going to speak the entire sentence out and write it down as well, right? तो मैंने यहाँ पर आपको helping words और phrases लिख दिए हैं. आपने इनकी help से और जो आंसर मैं दे रही हूँ उसको सुन के अपना complete answer अपनी कॉपी में लिखना है. The words were slipping off from his mind. ठीक है? How did David feel? David felt petrified, scared, and really terrified, right? The words and phrases, whatever he was reading, were slipping down from his mind. क्या हो रहा था बच्चे? वो आया उधर ये सोच के था कि उसने complete preparation कर ली है, लेकिन जब उसने खेन देखा, मिस्टर मर्डस्टोन की लुक देखी, मिस मर्डस्टोन का एक्सप्रेशन देखा, तो वो इतना खौफजदा हो गया कि जो कुछ वो पढ़ रहा था वो उसके दिमाग से निकलता चला जा रहा था. He was forgetting his lesson. What was it about Mr. Murdstone's behavior that made him feel this way? It was him who was switching the canes. He was picking one up and then the other one, weighing them down and seeing which one was heavier, which one was better, which one would hurt more. That really scared David. He anticipated caning, right? So, this was the answer of question number 1. Let's move on to question number 2. I'll read the question and then I'm going to give the answer forward. The 5,000 cheeses is part of an arithmetic lesson David was trying to learn. Why do you think Mr. Murdstone had changed cheeses to canes? What was the effect on David and his mum? Well, the effect was obviously very clear. David and his mum had anticipated what might come next. They had anticipated that cheeses are changed to canes. इसका मतलब क्या है? इसका मतलब ये है कि उतनी चीज नहीं, उतने canes पड़ेंगे अगर कोई गलत आंसर हुआ. This was the answer of question number 2. Let's move on to question number 3. See, the answer is on the top of the board that I had given you very recently, a few seconds ago, right? So they were petrified. एक होते scared, एक होते terrified और एक होते petrified. वो petrified थे, सख्त खौफज़दा थे कि what might happen next. क्योंकि cheeses का मतलब तो इनाम होता है, लेकिन canes का मतलब था मार, right? And since he was having a cane और उसने नाम भी cheeses से canes कर दिया था, तो they were actually anticipating a serious beating from Mr. Murdstone's side. Next, question number 3. How is David's mother prevented from protecting her son? If you will read the comprehension, you will see that when David's mother shouted, David or Sir, Miss Murdstone shouted and warned her and looked at her firmly and said, Clara, do not interfere. Right? So she was stopped by Miss Murdstone's warning tone. And in paragraph 3, she was running behind David and Mr. Murdstone in order to stop him from beating David up when Miss Murdstone shouted and said, Clara, don't be a fool. And this warning from Miss Murdstone basically stopped her from rescuing her son. So this was how David's mom was prevented from doing anything or from protecting her son by Miss Murdstone. Why do you think Mr. Murdstone walked David to his room slowly and gravely? अब ये पैराग्राफ में बहुत elaborately described किया है. वो ये कह रहे हैं as in the point of view of David, Mr. Murdstone enjoyed the upcoming beating, the upcoming punishment he was about to give. ठीक है, helping words पढ़ते हैं और फिर मैं आपको complete phrased out answer देती हूँ. Delight in formal parade of executing justice. Parade क्या होता है? Independence Day की parades देखी है आपने? उसके अंदर stations होते हैं, लोग होते हैं, एक march हो रही होती है different चीजों की. तो वो enjoy कर रहा था वो justice जो उसने देना था. ठीक है, और वो उस परेड को यानी उस वॉक को एंजॉय कर रहा था जो उनके लिविंग रूम से डेविड के बेडरूम तक थी, जहां जाके उसने डेविड को बहुत सीरियसली बीट करना था. सो in order to complete phrase it out, I will say that Mr. Murdstone walked David to his room slowly and gravely because he was having delight in the formal parade of executing justice. He was content with the idea that he was going to beat David up. He was happy and relaxed and getting all the energy from anticipating how he is going to beat David up. Question number 5. It sets my teeth on edge to think of it is how David thinks about that episode as an adult. Explain his feelings then and now. अब ये जो phrase है, if you will remember my previous lecture, I have explained this phrase to you. This phrase says कि उसका जो खौफ था, it sets my teeth on edge to think of it. यानी कि वो खौफ उसके ऊपर दोबारा लाजिम हो जाता है, दोबारा तारी हो जाता है जब वो उस कैफियत को दोबारा याद करता है, राइट? तो अगर हम इसको एक्सप्लेन करें इस तरह से, एक्सप्लेन हिज फीलिंग्स देन एंड नाउ, तो एट दैट पॉइंट व्हेन ही वाज अंडरगोइंग ऑल दिस एक्सपीरियंस, डेविड वाज एक्सट्रीमली पेट्रिफाइड. ही वाज स्केयर्ड इनफ टू ट्राई एनीथिंग in order to protect himself from being beaten so severely and to escape the punishment. And now he is extremely terrified yet to remember what he had undergone, what he had tolerated, what he had felt on that day, what he had been suffering from, or what he had suffered from on that specific day from the hands of Mr. Murdstone. So he was scared then and he is still scared now. This was question number 5. Let's move on to question number 6. Alright, question number 6 says, how does David feel about his crime in paragraph 5? Do you think he justified to feel that way? What was the crime? He bit Mr. Murdstone's hand very severely और इतना कस के बाइट किया था कि 15 days तक मिस्टर मर्डस्टोन के एक बैंडेज रैप्ड थी. तो what did he feel? Basically, he was scared. He was having multiple thoughts. He thought that might police arrest him. He thought that he could go to jail or even hanged to death for biting some person like this. And he was justified in feeling that way because he was a child. He had no clue what he had done was in self-defense. He had no clue whether he was allowed to do so. He had no clue that it was allowed for him to do a thing like this if he wants to protect himself, right? He was scared. Being a child, he was scared at what he could have been anticipating. He had no clue how the justice worked. He had no clue about his rights, about his mom's right. All he knew was that Mr. Murdstone was the authority. He could do anything to anyone at any time. Question number 8. How do you think David and his mother would have behaved with one another if they had been allowed to meet during David's imprisonment? अब David was imprisoned for 5 whole days. ठीक है? His mother was not allowed to meet him or to see him. How do you think they would have felt? ठीक है? They would have been compassionate. ठीक है? They would have been seriously compassionate. They would have cried together. They would have a serious emotional reaction, right? This was how both of them could have behaved if they have met during David's imprisonment. Question number 9. Why do you think David's mother kept her face away from David during the evening prayers? Obviously, David was beaten very harsh. He was beaten cruelly. And there were stripes on his face. His face was all swollen. His mother could not have borne to look at him this way. His mother could not have tolerated this brutality on David's face. So that is why she kept her face away. What is the meaning of the title of this text? Do you think that David's behavior was indeed disgraceful? Do you think David was disgraceful? David was not disgraceful. David did not do anything wrong. It was Miss Murdstone and Mr. Murdstone who had done something wrong. Okay? It was Mr. and Miss Murdstone who had been disgraceful, treating a child the way they did. How can you treat a child as a prisoner? How can you lock a child in his own room just for the sake that he had not learned his lesson? You should have given him some time to learn. That was seriously criminal. So it was Mr. and Miss Murdstone, the brother and sister, who were disgraceful, not David. These are all the questions for reading for interpretation. Let's move on to the next comprehension set of questions and let's do those. Alright, now we have reading for detail. I've just written the questions because I am going to orally give you the answers. ठीक है? आंसर्स मैं आपको ऑरल दूंगी, मैंने आपको सिर्फ क्वेश्चंस लिख के दिए हैं। क्वेश्चंस क्या कह रहे हैं? क्वेश्चंस ये कह रहे हैं कि मिस Murdstone was associated with firmness. Explain how the writer's words and phrases built up this impression of hers. Miss Murdstone को एक बहुत फर्म और स्ट्रिक्ट खातून बताया गया है। राइटर ने कौन से वर्ड्स और फ्रेजेस यूज किए हैं जो मिस Murdstone का ये इम्प्रेशन जो है और क्लैरिफाई करें और डिटेल से बताएं। तो राइटर ने वर्ड्स यूज किए हैं कि शी हैड अ वार्निंग वॉइस, शी वाज फर्मली वॉचफुल, and she called David's mom a perfect fool, and she warned her. She stared at her, glared at her. So all these things specify that she was a woman of firmness. Question number 2. In paragraph 2, explain how the few words spoken by Miss Murdstone and David's mother illustrate their respective characters. अब किस तरह से मिस मर्डस्टोन और डेविड की अम्मी के दरमियान जो मुकालमे हुए वो ये बता रहे हैं कि इन दोनों का आपस में कैसा रिश्ता था। मिस्टर मर्डस्टोन डेविड की अम्मी का सेकंड हस्बैंड था और मिस मर्डस्टोन जो थी वो मिस्टर मर्डस्टोन की बहन थी, एंड शी वाज एम्पावरिंग। ठीक है, शी वाज एम्पावरिंग। She had complete control. ठीक है, उनके पास complete control था डेविड की अम्मा का। उनकी सिर्फ एक आवाज होती और डेविड की अम्मा was compelled to do whatever she said. She would only call David's mom Clara once, and David's mom was obliged to look after, or David's mom was compelled to abide by all the instructions given by Miss Murdstone. So their relationship was that of a boss and the employee. She would rule David's mom, she would order David's mom, and David's mom was compelled to abide by her orders. Next is, how can you tell that Mr. Murdstone and his sister were working together against David's mother? If you will read paragraph 3, you will find out that Mr. Murdstone, before he was taking David to being punished in his room, winked at Miss Murdstone to tell her that he had all this planned. He had this planned out under his nose. So they were together into planning this massacre. How do you think the writer conveys sympathy for David throughout the text? The writer conveys sympathy for David by not justifying any or a singular one of Mr. Murdstone's action. He was calling David poor. He was basically showing sympathy, telling or speaking according to David's viewpoint. Not a single time did he speak with the viewpoint of Mr. or Miss Murdstone. What is the function of question marks in paragraph 7? Question mark डाले हुए, ठीक है? The function of question marks is the broken thoughts that were coming in David's mind. His thoughts were broken. His thoughts were not complete, like he was having multiple diverse thoughts, and all those multiple diverse thoughts were expressed by question marks in the paragraph. What is the oppression of remembrance which weighs David down in paragraph 7? Oppression क्या होता है? Oppression होता है cruelty. कोई रूलर हो वो जुल्म कर रहा हो अपने सब्जेक्ट्स के ऊपर, अपनी कंट्री मैन के ऊपर, ठीक है? दैट इज ऑपरेशन। और वो याद करता है ऑपरेशन रिमेम्बरेंस का, याद का जुल्म, याद की क्रूरटी, सिंस ही डिड नॉट हैव अ गुड चाइल्डहुड, सिंस ही डिड नॉट हैव अ हैप्पी चाइल्डहुड, व्हाटएवर ही रिमेम्बर्ड वाज फुल ऑफ ऑपरेशन। तो वो कह रहे हैं कि जुल्म, याद का जुल्म, यानी जब भी वो याद करता है वो थरथरा जाता है, वो कांप जाता है। So you can write the answer in this manner, that the operation of remembrance that weighs David down is the memory which has stayed in his mind of the time that he was brutally beaten and imprisoned for 5 whole days, even though he was a child, but he was not allowed to see his mother, and his mother was not allowed to see him as well. Last question. What is someone in devotional posture doing? डिवोशनल क्या होता है? बहुत ज़्यादा इबादत गुजार. तो अगर कोई इंसान किसी बहुत ज़्यादा इबादत गुजार फिगर में हो, सिचुएशन में हो, तो वो क्या कर रहा होता है? Obviously praying and wishing for something intently, something that he desired the most, something that is of utmost importance. So a person in devotional posture is basically praying or wishing for something inevitable, something that he requires most intently, something that he wants desperately. So this is what a person in devotional posture doing, right? अब इसमें मैं आपको एक चीज क्लैरिफाई कर दूं. David Copperfield was set in the 16th century, and at that time, when you get married, especially in England, when you get married to somebody, all your property goes to that somebody, and you cannot leave that person. ठीक है? तो डेविड कॉपरफील्ड की जो माँ थी वो बेवकूफ़ बन गई थी. मिस्टर मर्डस्टोन ने उसको अपनी बहुत ब्राइट साइड दिखा के उससे शादी कर ली, और शादी करके इंतहा का जुल्म किया डेविड पे भी और उसकी माँ पर भी, क्योंकि वो उस सारी प्रॉपर्टी का मालिक बन गया था. तो ही शोड ऑपरेशन, उसने वो ऑपरेशन क्रूरटी, जुल्म दिखाया उन लोगों पे जो उसके अंदर थे, जो उसके अंडर थे, राइट? और इस ऑपरेशन और क्रूरटी को डेविड की माँ कहीं जा नहीं सकती थी, कुछ कह नहीं सकती थी, बिकॉज दैट वाज द इंग्लैंड्स रूल एट दैट टाइम, दैट वाज द इंग्लैंड्स लॉ एट दैट टाइम, राइट? So we have done the comprehension question answers of Unit 8, reading for interpretation and reading for detail. I've given you answers of all the questions. Copy them down in your copy, right? अपना बहुत ध्यान रखो, हंसते खेलते रहो, पढ़ते रहो, और बेटा मुझे, पाकिस्तान को और मुसलमानों को अपनी दुआओं में शामिल रखो, अपने फ़राइज़ से बाखबर रहो. Let's meet together again. Until that time, Allah Hafiz.